Welcome back to the Everyday Princess with Leanne. Last week I shared with you about my accident, chocolate treasures in the storm. And I realized that it would be good to share a part 2 to this story. Why tell more? For the most part, so that we can both just relish God's grace in this whole situation. The injuries were pretty severe. After my accident and surgery, I woke up and I saw Nikki and Jonathan were there, and I was still pretty sedated, not really clear, but I looked at Jonathan and I said, "I am going to come home." And Nikki told me later, I'd forgotten I'd said it. I told her, I said, "This is not how I thought this day would end." Have you ever had that feeling? Have you ever thought that? I understand. I woke up the next morning in intensive care, and my arm was so tightly bandaged that it just felt like my arm was in a vice. I'm very grateful that they managed my pain really well, and really, although I had some major discomfort, I very rarely experienced any pain. My arm was broken above the elbow. Praise God, my elbow joint was not hurt. And this whole area here was very badly damaged. The doctors didn't know when they first cared for me if the truck it looked like the truck had driven over my arm. So you don't need to imagine it, but it was pretty severe. It was very severe. And I'm very grateful that they were able to put it all back together again. They moved me over to the regular ward the next day, and the doctor explained to me my injuries, and my leg was also, my right leg was also very badly hurt. When the bike flipped, I flew into the truck tire, so I was holding onto my bike, so my arm got it and my right leg. And the doctor said that my right leg hit so hard that the fat on my hip liquefied. And so they had to open that up and clean that out. And I also had an area about like this big of layers of tissue in the hip that ripped. Sorry. Anyways, it took probably 6 months for that to heal. And it was an arduous process, that healing. In the back of my mind, I didn't really speak it out. I think I was too afraid to. In the back of my mind, I wondered, is this my fault? What did I do wrong? And it wasn't until longer into my stay, because the police had told Nikki, wait till she's out of the hospital, wait till she's up to it, and then they would come in and take a report from me on what happened. They'd already talked to bystanders and to the truck driver, and they need to wait on my report before they could process it. But they didn't want to push me, and I really appreciated that. And I was very, very relieved to find out that I hadn't done anything wrong. It was just an accident. That truck driver, he just didn't see me. And I didn't know that from that time, up the day of the accident, over the next 6 or 8 months, I would visit the operating room 12 times. In the hospital there, every time you have a surgery, you have to talk to an anesthesiologist and sign papers. And by about like the 7th or 8th time, one of the doctors that had to do the conversation with me about it and sign the papers, I come in and he just looked at me and goes, "Frau Carter, for the 700th time." And I'm like, kind of feels like that. I wouldn't take a pill that would help relax you before the surgery. I had a real need to connect with the people in the hospital, with the nurses and the staff and the doctors, and I when they take me down to surgery, I'd have to wait in the first area, and I would talk to the nurses that were taking care of me, and I got to know them by name. And sometimes I got them mixed up because, they have these caps on, and, you can't see their hair and tell the difference between them. But it helped me. It just helped me to connect to them. And one of the things in the midst of these days in the hospital that was a real blessing to me was every evening my friend Heidi would phone, and she'd say, okay, we talk a little bit, and she goes, now you just be quiet. And she prayed for me, and then she'd hang up the phone. And I always knew every day that my evening would have this peaceful, loving prayer from Heidi to our loving Father. And I really treasured that. I really, really wanted to go home. That first day was 6.5 weeks, and I was in there from mid-November to into January, and I just longed to be home. And people kept saying, you need to get well first. And I'm like, I know, I still want to go home. And my sisters, Laurel, Patty, and Rosemary, they all came from Canada to share in the take care of Leanne when she arrived home from the hospital. My last week in the hospital, I was allowed to go home for a few hours each day. And Laurel, I felt so bad. Laurel was there for a week and basically just took care of me in the afternoons when I got to come home. But I was so grateful she was there and she could be there with David and Jonathan. Good sisters. Very happy. It took over 2 years of therapy. Yeah, lots and lots of physical therapy and occupational therapy. The first time I went to my occupational therapist, she does basically the arm, which was my major injury, and she just looked at, because my fingers were curled, my arm couldn't bend, my wrist couldn't bend, my elbow could do like that, my shoulder was frozen, so I was like, that was all I could do. She's so sweet. She looks and she goes, where should we start? There was just so many options. And she still accompanies me along the way. I only need to go in once every few months to help loosen the elbow because the scar tissue kind of pulls things together. But she has helped me so much. Gudrun, I am so grateful for her and for Alexandra. They walked with me and helped me get back my ability to move, and even to use my fingers. I had a bowl of cinnamon candies, and I'm like, okay, if I can get it out and put it in my good hand to stick it in my mouth, because I couldn't bend my arm, then I could eat the cinnamon candies. And the first time I went like this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I had no idea how bad my fingers. I couldn't even put them together. And but I really like cinnamon candies, and so it was a very successful therapy. I got far fast. One of the big moments was after I was in the hospital for 6.5 weeks and home for a while, and then there was still a screw that had to come out, and so when they took that out, I could finally go swimming and get some exercise. They moved my elbow because it was so stiff in my shoulder. So under anesthetic, they could bend them both. A little creepy it sounds, but oh my goodness, did it help. It really, really helped. And right before they put me under, I took my mask off and said, don't forget to move my elbow and shoulder. They're like, Frau Carter, put that mask back on. I'm like, okay, but don't forget. And when I got home, I slept on my sofa in the living room. I couldn't bring myself to even go up to my room. I don't know. It was just too hard. And so I slept in the living room on the sofa for weeks. And it just took time to come back home and to really come back home. And it was hard, but one of the major highlights after I went back in to have the screw removed, and they moved my elbow and my shoulder. A few weeks later, friends were living with us while they looked for a place, and Steph, she goes, Leanne, you got at least 10 more degrees there. And I'm like, what? I can move it that much? I ran into the kitchen and I got a glass and I put some water, and for the first time I could drink. I'm like, what else can I do? What else can I do? Got a banana. I wasn't hungry. I didn't care about food. I grabbed a banana. I could eat a banana. I was so excited. Oh my goodness, you have no idea. To be finally able to put, because I used to, like, I'd see some chocolate on my plate and I'd forget I can't bend my arm. And and then I'd be like, I can't even get to the chocolate. Of course, I did that and ate the chocolate. But it felt a little bit like being in jail. I couldn't get around. So those were some of the highlights, and those were some of the moments where I could really rejoice and see God's healing hand in my arm and in my leg. And I just wanted to share that with you and let you know that it was big and bad and hard. And I came through by God's grace and with so much help. And I'm at a place now where I can even do this. Like, this is a big deal. Look at that. Yeah, it really is a big deal. So, thank you for listening. And I hope you rejoice with me in God's goodness and God's grace. Until next time.